A farmer with a crop sprayer in his fields is insulted or forced to get out of his tractor.
What's become really hard is the way people view us. They used to look at our work with curiosity. Now they're suspicious or even angry.
He called me in tears, saying it's all over, because if we couldn't pay up, they'd come and take it all away.
Welcome to a new edition of France in Focus. I'm Nadia Sharby, and this week you join us in the Yvelines, west of Paris, where we've come to meet a farmer who's trying to change the increasingly negative image of his chosen profession. While France remains Europe's leading agrarian nation with some 30 million hectares of arable land, growing awareness regarding pesticides, animal welfare, and the environmental impact of farming has led to a serious disconnect between the French and their agricultural roots. Well, let's start with an overview of how this sector has evolved over the decades.
In 1945, 1 out of 3 people worked in the agricultural sector. In the 50s, farmers had a sizable goal to feed a country starved during the Second World War. This necessitated finding a more modern way to farm. The changes were rapid and became known as the Green Revolution. It involved new and improved machinery, as well as the first use of synthetic fertilizer. Little by little, small family-run farms began to disappear, making way for giant corporations, which started mass-producing vegetables, dairy, and animal products. In the 90s, France became the world's second-largest agricultural powerhouse. But by 2019, it's fallen to 6th place, and now France imports more than half of the vegetables consumed in the country. Nevertheless, France is still Europe's leader, with production estimated at 73 billion euros. Today, the agricultural sector accounts for only 4.6% of the country's workforce. There are 448,500 farmers in France, and 50% are over the age of 50. That's around half as many as there were back in the 80s.
Today, many French farmers are left struggling with the number of homesteads in constant decline, a scarcity of vocations to take over from an aging workforce, and an alarming rise in mental health issues. Add to that a new phenomenon known as agribashing. Take a look.
Insults, smears, attacks posted by activists on social media. French farmers are the country's new punching bags. Now, they're sharing their stories online. Many farmers say they're victims of what's been dubbed agribashing, an orchestrated campaign targeting the agricultural sector.
A farmer with a crop sprayer in his fields is insulted or forced to get out of his tractor.
We regularly get the finger, people who stop and hold their nose.
In March, a grain farmer in the east of France was attacked by a neighbor while spraying pesticides. He says he was punched 12 times. His ear was injured in the attack. The farmer chose to file a complaint. Another farmer in the west was also attacked while treating his field with pesticides. A car stopped, and 2 people got out and began shouting at him.
I went over as a courtesy and asked what was going on. They started calling me a poisoner and an assassin, a murderer.
Pesticide use is often central to these conflicts with farmers. Ecologists condemn the acts of violence, but say they support the fight against pollutants.
Environmental pollution does exist today. People are getting sick from pesticides. More and more studies show this. This isn't agribashing. It's normal for society to call us into question.
Another issue that sparked reported cases of agribashing: animal rights. These livestock farmers say they've been harassed for doing their jobs. Philippe, who prefers to keep his face off camera, shared a nasty letter he received.
It's shameful, a crime. The suffering you're forcing on these turkeys and rabbits, we're going to do the same to you.
Back in March, activists snuck into his operation at night to film the conditions the animals lived in. Since then, that video has been posted online and viewed more than 1 million times. Now Philippe says he lives in a state of constant fear.
So how can farmers fight back? Well, the key is perhaps in communicating more transparently and directly. From Twitter to YouTube, via Instagram and Facebook, the country's agricultural sector is taking the matter into its own hands, online, but also on the phone, for instance, with a new toll-free number that allows consumers to talk to producers. The fact-based show-and-tell approach aims to dispel a few myths and reassure callers, and I'm joined now by one of the voices that French consumers can hear when they call up for information. Jérôme Regnault, hello.
Bonjour. Hello.
We're here on your cereal farm in Plaisir. What's the question you get asked most often by consumers who call you up for information?
When we have questions about animal farming, it's often about their welfare. And when the questions are about crops, then we get asked a lot about pesticides, the so-called buffer zones. And of course, a lot of the focus is on glyphosate.
And what do you answer?
The issue of pesticides should never be minimized. You can't lie to the public. The name says it all, and they should be used by professionals. That's why we get training, why our tools are so precise and certified by the state. So what I do is I explain my methods, and the way I work is known as precision agriculture.
Now, obviously, as a farmer, you have a very busy schedule. What made you decide to add this toll-free phone line to your already heavy workload?
I think it boils down to a passion for my job. You can't do this work without truly loving it. I'm a farmer 24/7, and it's something you carry within you. As far back as I can remember, I've always wanted to be a farmer. So obviously, when your work comes under attack, or at least under pressure, when as a professional you know that it's getting a bad name, my instinct was to try and recreate the kinds of conversations we sometimes have at the edge of our fields when we talk to the locals. At least then you have respect. You can actually listen to each other and avoid any misunderstandings regarding our work.
Now, you obviously represent your own pretty small-scale farm, but what about the big industrialized farms that perhaps are those that spark the most concerns for consumers, and also, of course, imported goods?
Speaking for my type of work, what's clear is that in France, all the products that we use for farming have been given state approval. We're qualified to use them. We have authorizations, and our tools are extremely precise and checked. And it's important that we reassure French consumers on those points. But what about the industrialization of agriculture and its globalization? Everyday goods are imported, but they don't follow the same honest guidelines as we do here in France. Obviously, we're fine with working with globalized prices. That's part of the game. But we need the rules to be the same for all the players. So we need to explain all this to the French, to remind them that consuming local produce ensures an honest mission statement and quality goods. And if you take the issue from a global perspective, as a farmer, I think double standards regarding food quality are simply unacceptable.
Que moi, en tant qu'agriculteur aussi, je n'accepterais pas qu'il y ait une qualité alimentaire en 2 temps dans notre pays.
Now, your toll-free number aims to reassure consumers, but what about farmers? As we know, it's a profession that's hard hit by mental health issues, depression, stress. There's even over 150 cases of suicide every year. Do you get enough support?
As I said, this job is one of passion, so how can we accept that such passion turns deadly? Currently, we're at 1.5 to 2 suicides a day since the beginning of this year. It is tough work, and unfortunately, some of my colleagues do have dark thoughts. In the past, our passion would lift us up. A farmer could spend the day with livestock or in the fields and take a step back, get some breathing space and get back in touch with their vocation. But today we also face suspicion, and sometimes even aggression, both verbal and physical. So we have friends who take their own lives because they no longer have that breathing space. When you love your work, you do it wholeheartedly. You have so many falsehoods to dispel. It's unbearable.
Jérôme Regnault, thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Well, let's hear now from the widow of one young farmer who committed suicide 2 years ago after his passion for farming turned into a financial nightmare.
Camille Bourrin didn't know anything about farming until she met a young man of 22, the son and grandson of a farmer. She married Augustin, who dreamt of building up his 50-hectare farm and breeding his pigs.
You could tell he loved it. It was his thing, his passion. He loved the fact that I was by his side. His younger brother worked the land with him too. It was magic being in the family.
But problems piled up. The price for pork collapsed. Rats invaded. There was a bad harvest. The farm was losing money, and Augustin fell into depression. He killed himself on the 27th of October 2017. He said that morning he no longer wanted to be a farmer and was found dead hours later.
We found him from the ringing of his phone in an attic in one of the farm buildings. His brother brought him down.
Camille tried to sort out the demands for payment, the threats from bailiffs, and the refusal of the bank to renegotiate a loan. The bank did eventually offer credit, but the letter saying so only arrived the day after Augustin died.
We don't understand. The letter arrived at 10 a.m. on the Saturday, but it should have arrived at 10 a.m. on the Friday. If it had, what happened at 1 p.m. would never have taken place.
She has published the story of the events then to raise awareness about the problems farmers face and to try and help those, like Augustin, thinking of taking their own lives.
I know the work can be really difficult, but before taking such a step, think about stopping farming. Even if I understand that it's distressing, the shame involved in that, but don't leave like that. Think of the family you're leaving behind.
The number of farmer suicides is growing. Camille Borin says the pressures they face currently are too great and are unacceptable.
Well, that's where we end this edition, and we leave you on some haunting pictures by photographer Carole Petit, who travels across France to meet the families of farmers who've taken their own lives. Placed according to the family's wishes, sometimes on the very spot of their loved one's untimely death, the empty chair symbolises their absence.